Viewer discretion is advised.
Yar me mateys, it be the day after Talk Like a Pirate Day.
International Talk Like a Pirate Day, eh?
Yar me mateys, this torrent won't download.
Or from the Pirate Bay. Arr. Pirates.
And welcome in to the FC Podcast. You guys are tuning in hopefully on Friday. I hope you're having a great Friday. It is, of course, I, the great Toast 78901, and my co-host, Max Dogger.
Max Dogger, I do this every week.
So interesting stuff, guys. Of course, because you're listening to this on a Thursday or at least after, or a Friday rather, or after. We're doing the show on Thursday, of course. And interestingly enough, I would say, before we even jump into anything else, that there was some major news today. Would you agree, Senor Max?
I would have to agree entirely.
Coming straight out of Tokyo, it was reported today that Hiroshi Yamauchi, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name.
Yamauchi, I don't know.
Yeah, essentially the guy that was the head of Nintendo for years died today at age 85. Apparently, his death was caused by complications of pneumonia, according to Nintendo. So, yeah, we're essentially seeing a guy pass away. And although Nintendo isn't the giant that it once was, I would definitely attribute to, especially in-house and, gaming as we know it could very much be attributed to, in large part, to Nintendo.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, apparently, in case you guys didn't know, here's a little background for you. He led Nintendo from 1949 to 2002. In 2002, he handed it off to different people on the board, but of course he was the main guy during Nintendo's success for sure. And essentially, it was kind of weird the way they started. He took Nintendo in 1949, and he essentially started steering Nintendo towards board games, toy guns, pitching machines, and a bunch of other stuff that essentially failed, and Nintendo didn't really take off as a company. Yamauchi would later attribute that to a lack of imagination. And then he ended up stumbling across arcade games. And although he had said many, many times that he personally does not understand gaming, he doesn't get the appeal of video games or anything like that, he saw that it was definitely a market that he could do something with. And they started with things such as Donkey Kong and the original Mario Bros., which essentially were, original old school arcade games. And then, of course, in 1983, he released, or him and Nintendo rather, released the Nintendo Entertainment System. And this essentially, I don't know if you had one, Max, but I remember having one when I was a kid.
Yeah, for me, my first console was the Nintendo 64. A lot of my friends had the NES and SNES, and then also the, the Sega console that I can't remember. Not the Dreamcast, but the one before that.
The Genesis?
The Genesis, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I usually played Nintendo games at friends' houses, but then I finally got a Nintendo 64 and then a PlayStation 2, and that's where my gaming at home kind of began.
I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' when I was a kid, and my grandparents actually had an NES and an SNES there from both my cousins and my uncles and aunts that came before me that had it, and I remember putting tons of time into that when I was a kid, and then I ended up, of course, also getting the 64. Later on when it came out, I also got the GameCube, and I think a lot of people's first handhelds especially, and Nintendo definitely dominated there for quite a while, was
absolutely.
The Game Boy.
Game Boy Color. Mine was purple.
Mine was also purple. Like, purple was the shit. I had both a purple Color and an Advance. I even remember, though, playing on the original Game Boy, before the original handheld.
My neighbor had one of those.
They were big.
They were.
But essentially, in 1988, New York Times also talked to him. There's a funny little snippet here, or tidbit rather. And interestingly enough, if you ever wondered why Nintendo's games are so weird, like the premises for them, essentially Yamauchi and the rest of the board and everything that were working for Nintendo thought that having things that were very, very preposterous in terms of premises worked very well for the video game world, and especially for marketing it to younger people. So that's why, for example, Super Mario Bros. 2 is, as they put it, the story of two mustachioed Italian janitors who endure various trials, such as dodging hammer-swinging turtles and lava balls and man-eating plants, in order to save a mushroom princess. And I mean, I think that's pretty accurate. If I look back to especially Nintendo-based games that you associate with Nintendo, like Mario, the premises are so fucking off the wall.
Well, you had to consider that, shrooms were a big thing in Japanese culture back when those games were made. And it appears that a couple of them have, made their way into the Nintendo culture via the Mario Brothers and the franchise of Mario, where getting mushrooms makes you bigger and better and more awesome. So maybe there's a little bit of influence from the
Possibly.
drug world.
In 1990, they ended up releasing the SNES, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Again, not very creative with the names yet. But apparently, and I don't remember this because I wasn't even born yet, of course, but they had fans camped outside electronics stores for days waiting for it. And it ended up
crazy Japanese people are crazy.
It almost selling out at its top, at its peak, at about 50 million units.
That's just ridiculous. Like
that is fucking nuts.
Considering like how the population has grown since then, like, wow.
Yeah, this is 50 million units, and we're talking early gaming, which, to be honest, in that era, if you were a gamer, you were most likely playing Zork on your computer and running a DOS-based game. You weren't, playing on your TV. That was rather new.
Yeah, and with today, the Xbox 360, I think in the US is 70 million units or maybe more. But it's just that was over a ridiculously long lifespan, and the NES and the SNES, they were out for a long time, but the volume and how much they've sold is just amazing.
Yeah, especially considering that, I mean, there wasn't a huge gap between the SNES and the 64.
Yeah.
Not that much. Definitely not the, 10 years that we've seen of the 360.
Well, 8 and a
8.
half.
I considered it a decade just because lol.
Yeah, you're talking Xbox Live. It's been 10 years.
Yeah. So there you go. And then, of course, the next ones come out were, like I said, the 64. Then you had the GameCube and the Game Boy handhelds, and damn, those, if you want to see gaming success, that's what those were, in my opinion.
The GameCube was a little lunchbox, just taking it around. I had a purple lunchbox. It was pretty great.
As did I. There was something about Nintendo and purple.
It was weird, yeah. It just worked, though.
It just worked for them. And it was that weird kind of off indigo purple, too.
Yeah. Like the Spiral the Dragon kind of purple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the 64, despite how goofy the fucking controller was, I think everyone I know had a 64.
Well, yeah, and, with their innovation of the joystick, for a home console, what is this?
Yeah, introducing that was definitely a lot. I think it definitely paved the way. For example, one of the things that was featured on the 64, of course, one of its biggest selling games was GoldenEye. Which I don't know if you remember that, Max.
I actually never played it because I was a youngin'. But I did watch my neighbors play it because they were older. And it looked fun, but...
What's interesting about GoldenEye is that it was one of the games to revolutionize the FPS industry in that it was the first game to offer... Excuse me. I'm dying.
Oh, that's not good. Somebody call a ambulance.
Holy shit, what the hell was that? Anyway,
that was a cough.
I apologize for those at home.
My medical prognosis is that you're dying, and you should probably stop the podcast.
Oh, well, then that's not going to happen. I care too much about getting our information to our listeners. But anyway, GoldenEye was one of the first games to offer damage based on where you shot somebody. For example, if you shot somebody in the head and got a headshot, you did a lot more damage. It was, depending on the gun, a one-shot kill. And essentially the beginning of seeing critical hits in critical areas in first-person shooters. Yeah,
and especially nowadays, you see that in every video game. It's just standard that those areas exist. Headshots do more damage. Team Fortress 2, for example, headshots, shooting people in the back.
Yeah, and I don't think that would have been as big and taken off as quickly. And I mean, it wouldn't have even been possible had it not been for 64's revolutionary design that included both a trigger and a joystick.
Yeah, and it's just Nintendo experimenting, and they've always been experimenters and innovators. And we'll probably talk about this a little bit more coming up, but, their history of, revolutionizing the game industry is just, it's been amazing what they've done and what they've contributed and what, Hiroshi Yamauchi has been able to do in the 53 years he was at Nintendo. Like, he left after the GameCube launch, and he passed it over to Satoru Iwata, who we now know as the main boss dude, friend guy. But, yeah, just the history of innovation and everything that they've been able to accomplish has just been astounding for gaming.
Yeah, and then, we ended up having the GameCube come in. I personally, and this could be, maybe just because I loved it as a kid, or really when I was younger, because I even used it into my early teens. I personally felt that the GameCube was even better than, for example, the PS2.
I'm going to have to disagree with you on that one.
I feel that Sony won, but I think the GameCube, from my perspective, was designed better.
Okay. The PS2 was older, and so, but it did have dual joysticks and had shooters, and I got my main gaming out of my PlayStation 2, and then eventually my Xbox, and I did my GameCube. I hardly had any games for the GameCube, and that didn't, I don't know, I just, after the N64 and I got my PlayStation 2, there's just more games on the PlayStation 2 that I played, like SSX, for example. That was one of my favorite games. Mm-hmm. Then NHL and NASCAR and stuff like that.
Yeah. What I found also interesting is that there of course are big names that were never ported to it, but there were quite a few games that were even ported that were first-person shooters to the GameCube. I remember a big one being Gun, if anybody remembers that game.
Oh, I played 15 minutes of that, and then I stopped.
And like I said, I will totally admit that I think my concept of the GameCube is coming out of bias because I am a massive ass Legend of Zelda fan. And I gotta tell you, having both I think was it called the Collector's Edition? I can't remember. It was a special edition that was a remake. It wasn't really a remake, it was just really a port of Ocarina of Time, to be able to play that on my GameCube and then switch it out and then throw in fucking Wind Waker. Oh my god, so many hours of mine were spent into that, into those two games on the GameCube.
I'm going to be honest with you here. I never finished Ocarina of Time because I was a young kid and I was too afraid of the zombie type things. I can't remember their name. And it's I never finished that. Me and my neighbor friend, my best friend, we never finished that because we were just creeped out by it, and we're what the heck is this? And then I never played Wind Waker or any of the cartoony Zeldas, but I did play Twilight Princess, and I got to the 4th temple, and then my Nintendo Wii got a file management error, and so it wiped all of my data. So I'm you know what, I'm done. I'm just not, no.
You're one of those people that aren't meant to enjoy Zelda. Interestingly enough that you bring it up, that was another thing. Getting a bit more recent now, of course, Nintendo had the Wii, which I personally feel was a flop.
You think the Nintendo Wii is a flop?
I don't think it was able to compete.
I think the Wii U was a flop, and that the Wii is great.
Okay, yeah, if I'm going to compare it to other consoles, then yes, then the Wii U is the flop of them.
Because most people just think it's an accessory that you can get for your Wii when it's entirely new console and new architecture and HD. But yeah, I think the Wii, it revolutionized again with motion controls, and then Microsoft and Sony tried to do it, and they're still trying to do it. And Nintendo's yeah, we're cool, let's innovate, and let's try this. And
I would agree. I think they definitely came out strong in that. They definitely started to revolutionize motion control. For me, though, what really killed them was the amount of games that they had on it, the types of games that they had on it, and again, that they stuck with the shittiest type of controller ever, and that was the Wiimote. The Wiimote was it was a bad controller. It was designed badly. I know, for example, they even offered a port of Call of Duty on the Wii.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was Call of Duty World at War. And you would play with the Wiimote.
Yeah.
And just, just no. No, 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 no. It was, I guess, an okay idea, but
Well, did
especially
you
for
have
just
the Wii Zapper, the little gun that they made for it?
yeah, they also have the Wii Zapper. I guess that makes it a bit better.
Yeah, I got that bundle that came with like Legend of Zelda, like based off of Twilight Princess. It came with like a little shooter thing, and
The crossbow.
yeah,
Yep.
and that I played that for all of like an hour, and then I never used the Zapper ever again.
Speaking of the Zapper, in case you guys didn't know, that's something that Nintendo has had around very, very early. That was even on the original NES.
Yep.
They had the original Zapper gun. It was great for playing, for example, duck hunting, or duck hunt
Mhm.
rather, which I don't know if you guys ever played that, but that was fun as hell when I was a kid. Um, and again, I think that that also comes out of Nintendo definitely came out strong originally with the arcade and innovating the way in which they do. They've always found ways to bring old school classic arcade feels into your actual living room.
Mm-hmm.
They've had the Zapper. They had it with the Wii. They had motion sense. And I mean, for a long time, if you wanted anything that was motion sense or things, for example, and I can't really say DDR-esque in terms of the pads because I think Sony stole that one.
Yeah.
But overall, I feel that Nintendo has had a lot more success trying to give a classic arcade feel to things.
Yeah. And it's always been like you said earlier in the podcast, like Hiroshi didn't think, arcades, he didn't understand them. But like it's popular and it made revenue, especially, in the 20th century, late 20th century, arcades were the place to go and the things to do. And so if you could monetize that and bring it into the home, that's where Nintendo really innovated and made their money, just by bringing all those people away from the arcades. And eventually, nowadays, you hardly see any arcades anymore, like dedicated arcades. They're very few and far between.
Yeah. They definitely are. They're definitely dying. And again, like you said, he didn't have an eye for games, but I think what helped him along was that in 1977 he ended up teaming up with Shigeru Miyamoto, who was the creator of Mario, Donkey Kong,
Miyamoto? Shigeru Miyamoto. I don't know if that's how you say it, but I just thought it's always how I've said it. Shigeru Miyamoto.
My Japanese is horrible. Guys, in case you didn't know, I was a Latin student. I can do romantic languages all you want. Don't throw any kind of Asian mainland or offset languages at me because I'm not going to know how to pronounce it.
Yo puedo hablar español.
But what I feel really helped is he ended up bringing him in. He was a great video game designer. He definitely knew what the fans wanted, what direction to go with it, and essentially how to design them. However, I feel personally that that was also their downfall. And what I mean by that is I feel that Nintendo's problem, one of the reasons why they can't compete anymore, is they got a formula and essentially they stuck with it. They're like I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard of the band Incubus, but they're like the Incubus of the video game industry. They found a fucking formula and they don't deviate from it. Like, it's just, that's what it is. And I feel that's a major problem for them. And I think if they do want to turn stuff around, they're definitely going to have to start, I don't want to say innovating because they're always innovating. It's more of open up, so to speak.
Yeah, Shigeru, he decided and he, invented a couple of franchises and he found out, how they work and what works with them. But then he just copy-pasted and, did it all over and over again. Like, this formula works, so all we need to do is make a new world and a slightly new story, but change nothing about the game or the gameplay, other than, Mario has a hat that does this time, and call it revolutionary. They're almost like the Call of Duty of, the yesteryear, or like the Apple of, today. Just re-release the same thing.
I think the one franchise that they had that ever did deviate a bit, and again, this could be my own personal bias speaking, was Legend of Zelda. There are a couple things that are always present in Legend of Zelda that I guess you could make arguments for copy-pasting. But they definitely try to do something new with every game. I mean, even on the Wii, when they got to Twilight Princess, they released their first teen-rated Legend of Zelda game.
Yeah.
Which for them is huge, you know what I mean? To even have it go up to teen because of the amount of violence and the bit, I believe there was one of the major concerns for it was I think there was a bit of blood.
Yep.
and they decided we need to up this rating, which I thought was really, really cool. I thought that they were going to take that a bit further, maybe have a mature Legend of Zelda game, but no.
That's what I would like more than anything. But it's not gonna happen.
It's not going to happen. I can't see Link be a complete badass yet. But yeah, in terms of their other stuff, and these are ones that people might not know as much. For example, Max, have you ever heard of the Virtual Boy?
Oh yes, the Virtual Boy. How can one forget the Virtual Boy?
Well, most can because it was a flop, personally. Coming from me in terms of sales.
The predecessor to the Oculus Rift.
Again, though, they were trying to innovate. For those of you guys who don't know, it's essentially kind of like this red box that had these like little visors that you could look into, and it looked into a game. And the way that the visor was designed was that your game would appear in 3D.
Yeah.
Which, again, they did this in. I mean, we're talking like 90s. So I mean, it's not that great a material. It's not that great a quality. But they were trying to do something new in the 3D world, and I think they definitely tried to bring that game back into it and that style back into everything when they ended up hitting the Nintendo 3DS, which I also personally feel was a bit of a flop. I feel that the way in which they added 3D to the 3DS was a little gimmicky.
But that's all Nintendo is, though, is gimmicks, and they usually pay off.
That's what they're starting to become, yeah. I would say that they're running off of a long line of gimmicks.
So do you think that's like something that started with Hiroshi and just continued on, or do you think that's more of a Satoru Iwata who's now leading Nintendo? Do you think that was under his reign when he started in like 2002?
I think I would actually blame him in 2002 because Yamauchi stepped down in 2002, and it's real interesting. He's apparently reported as telling everyone that the reason why he stepped down is that he had no energy left.
Well, you run a business for 53 years.
Oh yeah. He just, he was tired, he stepped down, he handed it off. And I feel that the problem with Iwata is he is the one who needs to do something new. Yamauchi stepped down in 2002. Yeah. It's been a decade now. And a decade that has seen the release of multiple consoles. And the problem is he hasn't done anything that's really pushing boundaries anymore.
Yeah, so the most revolutionary thing they did was the Wii. And then now there's, with the Wii U, they're just taking the tablet world and putting a gamepad around it. And they're calling it new.
Even the Wii isn't as revolutionary if you also keep in mind that around the time that came out, the PS2 had already had, what was it, the eye capture? What was it, the eye
toy?
Yeah, the eye toy. There we go. So, I mean, it was definitely something new, but it wasn't a completely new idea to the gaming world. It was a new take on it, I would say. So
I would have to disagree because the iToy it was just a camera. It was nothing else than a camera. The Wii is a sensor and it's not a camera like the Kinect is or the Eye is today for the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 3. I'd have to disagree with you. I think that the Wii was probably the most original idea hardware-wise since the 64 controller having a joystick on it.
Interesting. Again, I agree and disagree with you, and that's what's interesting. I agree on the grounds that I think it was the most revolutionary since then, and I will agree that it was revolutionary, but my point is it wasn't original thought in the gaming world.
Okay.
Although the iToy, I mean, you can make the argument that it is just a camera and that it does have that. It had games in which your motion was how you played. Yeah. It was only a camera, it wasn't a sensor, and I think putting it to a sensor was the step further that they needed, but I'm saying the concept was already kind of rolling.
Okay.
But yeah, I think in short, Nintendo, if they do want to survive, which I really hope they do, I'm a big supporter of competition. I don't like it when there, for example, is a period of time where one console super dominates. I very much want to be able to say again that I want to go out and buy all three consoles from the three main developers. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I like it when gaming is at that point because I feel that you have just so much competition that you're going to see a bunch of great things come out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Competition drives innovation, which, you need to separate your brand. So you do all these different things. You take more risks. There may be more flops along the way, but it's what drives industry forward and doesn't keep it stagnant, which is what I think this, next generation, what Xbox was trying to do was trying to push the boundary and try to make it more like Steam. But then, they did all their 180s and stuff. So now we just have the Xbox 362 and then the PlayStation 3.5. And then you have the Wii U, which is what the Wii should have been originally with an HD system. But so I just feel like this next generation, while it's cool and exciting to finally have like really decent graphics, it's not really doing much to push the envelope anymore. It's just technology has upgraded, so we're going to upgrade. It's an incremental upgrade. It's not anything brand new and exciting. Like the jump from the Xbox to the Xbox 360 was, just like in terms of graphics and functionality, and then Xbox Live, taking off and being the thing that now everyone uses really for competitive multiplayer.
And I would totally agree. I mean, this isn't, for example, a jump from like 8-track to MP3.
Yeah.
We're having a jump of the iPhone 1 to the iPhone 5S. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it really comes down to pretty much just being hardware upgrades, really.
Yeah.
And it's really sad to see that, because I remember, even as a kid, whenever you would hear that a new console was being released, you were so excited because you wanted to know what new stuff was there. You know what I mean? It was like, how are they going to have the controller? Is there going to be a joystick? Where are they going to have this? How many triggers are they going to have? And I remember being a kid, seeing, especially starting with the Nintendo Entertainment System, the amount of buttons that got added along the way.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I went from, a regular D-pad and an A and a B button to the, 64 and the, PlayStation 2, Xbox, and GameCube, and just looking at it going, there's so many more things I can do.
I've got all these buttons I can press all the buttons.
And now I feel that we've kind of just started to hit this limit where we're no longer worrying about actual mechanic and hardware upgrades, and instead we're just looking at processing power upgrades.
Yeah.
And it is a little sad. I mean, I would have liked, for example, we have especially the Kinect, that's pretty much, the Kinect and the PlayStation Move are kind of the big, I guess you would call them like extra hardware things that are going with these consoles.
Yep.
And I feel that while they're innovating with that, they haven't taken many risks yet. I'll put it that way.
Well, yeah, the Kinect 2.0 is what the original Kinect should have been. And now we're finally getting to where, it's actually functional and useful. And, from what we've seen and heard so far, it's looking like it'll actually be useful and not just, a gimmick that's been shoved down our throats for the purpose of Microsoft making more money. Like the PlayStation at the Tokyo Game Show today, they announced that the PlayStation Eye, they're just not calling it the Eye toy anymore. It's not a toy, ladies and gentlemen. It's just the Eye. That'll have voice recognition and motion gesture capabilities. So it's becoming, from what I can tell, like a Kinect 1.0 for the PlayStation 4. So if you're excited about that, you can be happy, I guess. But it just feels like we're not going further. We're not pushing the envelope on what's happening with this next generation.
Absolutely. And interestingly, apparently one of the last interviews that Yamauchi had was with a business magazine in 2003. And at the time, he was, of course, having Nintendo pretty much, especially in Japan, start to get pummeled by Sony.
Yep.
With the PlayStation 2. Sony definitely was starting to emerge as a very large market for gaming. And essentially there was a suggestion that the quote-unquote gaming wars in terms of supremacy of a console would be over because we'd have a console like the PS2 that would just take off and completely dominate the market and there wouldn't be anything there. And apparently he completely laughed it off and said that and I quote, "That's absolutely wrong. The gaming wars, they will never end. That's just not how business works. Nobody knows what tomorrow's going to bring." And I'd have to agree with him, but what makes me really sad is that I feel that his successors aren't living true to that whole nobody knows what tomorrow will bring.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I really would like a lot more innovation in the gaming world in general. So Max, I think I'll pose the question to you, and this will also be the question for most of our listeners, is if you were part of a team that was designing things, what would be your big push the envelope innovation that you try to accomplish?
That's a good question. Probably, well, the biggest innovation, which might be announced within the next week or two, by Valve, is the Steam Box. So that whole small microcomputer that puts out a lot of crap. By crap, I mean awesome. So probably changing the form factor to where, our consoles, even though they're powerful and they're meant for our home, we can just physically take the entire thing, and take it with us to different places. So kind of similar to what, the GameCube was going for, with a little handle so you could carry it around to your friend's house. Seeing things get smaller, I guess, would work. But with the Xbox One, it's absolutely ginormous. It's comparable to the original Xbox in size because of, the heating and, the cooling involved and, making sure it's powerful. So that'd be one innovation, which that'll eventually happen just naturally over time as, we can make things smaller and chips smaller and pieces smaller. Probably software-wise would probably be the biggest innovation. Kind of going towards a Steam-like model where you have the digital marketplace and how it's interconnected. And basically, the first step in this innovation would be doing what the Xbox One was originally trying to do. And that would be a good branching off point to having, your console be the thing that you use for everything from cable to, recording television, DVR-wise, and then capturing, gameplay. What the original design of the Xbox One was going for, that's what I want the first step in design innovation to be. Because I don't think you can really have, other than making things smaller, you can't really have much of the design innovation in the size or in the controllers, because I think we're at a point where there aren't many good ideas left for how to, put input into a console. People have talked about heartbeat sensors, which the Kinect 2.0 apparently can do. I don't know if that's a legit thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of claims by the Kinect. I almost feel like Peter Molyneux is on the Microsoft marketing team, and then they don't deliver on stuff. But that's a discussion for another time.
Also, the discussion of how your Kinect is becoming more and more like HAL.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It's just, I don't think we're at this point where revolutionary ideas, the next big step, I guess, would be more towards the Oculus Rift with that virtual reality headset that's on PCs right now. The successor to the Virtual Boy, but the actual good one. I guess, immersing ourselves more would be the next option, gaming-wise, how we play. But other than that, I don't see how we can change the way we play games, physically. I don't see how that will change anytime soon until, we develop brain scanning technologies so we can just think a game. But I don't think that's coming anytime soon. Scientists, if you want to prove me wrong, go ahead. But, yeah, so since you asked me the question, I'm going to ask you the question. What do you think?
I think if I was part of a team, like you said, all the other stuff about getting smaller and processing it bigger, that's just something that will happen with time. And I think you do definitely hit the nail on the head that in terms of what we can do in terms of physical stuff and with the actual hardware, we've kind of hit this point where there isn't much further we can go. I mean, we've sadly hit the point where we can't really add any more buttons. You start adding more buttons, I don't know how well your reflexes are going to do.
Well, then you have the keyboard, basically. That's what I feel like whenever I play on the PC. I'm like, all these buttons, but I can't reach them.
Yeah, we pretty much we will hit that. I think for me, what I would look into and what I would spend a lot of time on is definitely something with motion capture. It would be kind of a combination between Oculus Rift and motion capture.
How so?
What I mean by that is it wouldn't just be a virtual reality helmet that would have all these different things. I'm talking like full-on suit.
Oh, so you're talking like like the treadmills and that go in all directions and
Yeah.
walking in the game and stuff like
Um,
that.
Again, that wouldn't necessarily be something that I could bring into the homes right away, but I think getting the technology grounded for it
Yeah,
is
like the
definitely what I
technology and like that movie like Gamer or something. Did you ever see that one? Was with what's his face? Gerard Butler, I think. Where he was just like they had all these prisoners that they gamified the system where if you win battles because you get controlled, you put implants in you, and then these rich kids in the future can control you in gaming using your bodies in a world that they set up where you it's a basically a live death match but with actual people. And so
interesting.
it's like it's yeah, kind of like the Hunger Games or like Battle Royale style where, only one person comes out as the victor, but you're being controlled by someone else, remotely who's playing the game. And
Interesting.
so, yeah, that system was a good setup. Like if you look at what they designed it as,
Uh-huh.
that'd be a good way to try to accomplish, being immersed in a game.
Yeah, I think the innovations that I would want to see are summed up very, very in short as immersifying the gamer, immersing them completely. And I think definitely that's a way. I don't know if you were, Max, but I am a huge Star Trek fan.
Oh, absolutely.
And I would love to eventually have a holodeck in my fucking
Yes,
house.
please.
Gaming holodeck would be so awesome. I would love it. I don't know if I'd ever come out. I would get so distracted and so caught up in what I'm doing. And I think the other thing, and this is interesting because I know it's starting to get done, especially with Destiny, at least from what we've seen with Bungie so far, is handheld devices are definitely, they're here to stay, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They're going to be innovated, but they're here to stay. And I think the next step is getting you connected with your handheld devices. Of course, the devices need to get a bit better. And so, I mean, I don't know if I would support, for example, Xbox making their own phone, but they are part of Microsoft, and Microsoft phones are there.
Then they have Windows phones already.
Or, yeah, Windows phones, rather. And essentially getting everything interconnected. I know with Destiny, from what we've seen so far, it seems like you can update and mark things, for example, in quests from your phone. You can design your character, change out inventory and change out your equipment and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Essentially pushing the envelope and going a step further to where when I leave and I have time on, the bus in my commute while I'm going to class, I can leave the house playing something and I can continue, at least in some way, shape, or form, what I'm doing on my way out.
Yeah, the next gen is definitely doing that better. Like with the Division, like having a guy on his tablet, control a UAV and help out in the game world. Like, that's cool. That's the kind of technology I want to see. Like Battlefield 4 on a tablet, you can do commander mode and you can just jump in a random game and you can be the commander, that 65th and 66th player or whatever in the game. Like Assassin's Creed 4 even has, functionality via their own application that they're going to be launching for it. So you can have I think you have like your recruits or your assassins that you have, and you can upgrade them and send them on missions and upgrade your inventory. Same with Battlefield. You can, customize your character and your class on the go, on mobile. Just cool stuff like that. I want to see more and more of it. And I want more.
I think so far the biggest innovation that I've seen that isn't just like, change your inventory and stuff like that is the commander mode with Battlefield 4.
Yeah.
I know when I saw that and when they started talking about it at E3, when we were doing the E3 livecast, I was blown away essentially by it. Like, it wasn't even so much that it was such a complex idea that I had never thought of. It was just somebody's actually doing that. You know what I mean? It was really great. It definitely, I feel, is in the right direction for the innovation that we need to see.
I 100% agree.
And I think another question that could go out to the listeners and to you, Max, is I feel that especially with the Nintendo systems getting back on topic, they revolutionized quite a few things. They were always pushing the envelope. And speaking of pushing the envelope, do you think that in the modern day with the internet and how linked in we are with talking to each other, do you think the progress of the gaming world is being slowed because of it?
Repeat the first part, because I wasn't
We
listening.
have pushing the envelope and innovating and all that. Essentially, do you think innovation is being slowed by the amount of internet and social media that is around anymore? For example, what I mean by that is the Xbox One comes out and they have all these different features, and I mean, instantaneously there was this response on the internet. And they started just removing, everything left and right and doing complete 180s. And I personally feel that even there were a couple ideas there that were decent. I mean, Steam's even picking up the whole library sharing thing now.
Yeah.
And I feel that although social media and the internet definitely allows awareness and information to be spread more, and it allows for companies to be able to find out more what's going on in their gamer's head, I'm worried that innovation will be slowed on the grounds that you have this outcry on the internet because people don't like change at first.
Oh yeah, there's many different instances of this. Like when recently with Call of Duty Black Ops 2, they changed a couple of things in a title update that adjusted like weapon tunings by like tenths of seconds. And then like the guy who originally made the Twitter post about it from whatchamacallit, Treyarch, that they were talking about it and they were announcing the update. And that guy received death threats from hundreds of people, like for changing how a weapon fires in a game, like by like changing how fast it shoots, like tenths of a second kind of stuff here, and
Yeah.
like it's just ridiculous. And then with what happened with Phil Fish, who was the creator of Fez, like Fez 2 got canceled completely because of a couple people on the internet just harassing him. And like Cliff Bleszinski of Epic, who's no longer a part of Epic, but he's independent. He's working on this own project that he's teasing. Like on Twitter, like even today, he's like, I think that everything that's going on with this internet connectivity, like I talk to so many people that are just worn out by people not liking what they're doing and being vocal about it and being mean and nasty about it. And it's like, the vocal majority on the internet is always the angry people and the trolls and the haters. You don't often get the people that love the game because, they love it by playing it and buying your stuff and doing it more and playing it more. That's the main way people that love games play them, is just by playing them. They don't, usually show affection on the umpteenth level that, the opposite form that haters do. And Cliff is like, taking this year on tour off is just like amazing because I don't have to deal with any of this crap. Even though he still gets crap for what happens in Gears of War, even though he wasn't a part of really Gears of War Judgment, he still gets crap on Twitter all the time because he was the face of a company and now he's not. And I 100% agree that yes, social media is going to take its toll on developers because everyone is just hating and they want ways they want it, and they're not allowing for like creative ideas to flow. Another good example is Mass Effect 3 with the ending. They made a whole new addition to the ending because of people yelling and complaining. So yes, I agree. There is a correlation between social media on the rise and, lack of innovation / developers being scared and not really loving what they're doing anymore.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, definitely, guys, in your listener mail this week, send in your response to that, whether you think social media and the internet is slowing down the progress, or if you think that the benefit of being able to communicate more with the companies that you love that are making these games and consoles, if that outweighs it. And I think the final question before we go ahead and go to a break and come into our last segment of the listener mail, you had said earlier about having the ability to just think games, and you just think it and it happens. Do you think that has a place in video games, or would the ability to think games break it?
Well, there already are some games that record certain types of brain waves. They don't, they aren't talking about like super deep thought levels, just like generic thought processes that do control games. I think there's certainly an application for them. I don't think it'll become mainstream, however, quote unquote mainstream, because the brain thinks very fast, but the reflexes and the control of the hands, it's what makes it personal. It's not just a computer, because that's what your brain is. It's a computer.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it'll become mainstream. I think people will try it and people will try to make it a thing. But
Yeah.
I think like 3D televisions, it'll just, die away.
Interesting, and I definitely have to agree with you. I see it. I see it having a place, but especially for things such as like first-person shooters, if you put everybody into a game where thought is controlling it, and now, I mean, we're talking Halo. You're not just controlling somebody in a Spartan suit. You're essentially controlling the Spartan suit the same way that it's controlled by its, Spartan.
Yeah, and you won't miss.
Yeah, exactly. You don't miss. It's a headshot every single time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And without having that actual like physical element, I can definitely see it taking a toll on competitive gaming. Now, games that aren't competitive, that are, played for the story aspect of it, yeah, I can see them having a place. I can see it having a place in RPGs, for example.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because it doesn't matter how fast you can think. If that boss is however strong it is, you still need to innovate with your sword and shield,
I was thinking more on like the conversational aspect, like with what Lionhead was trying to do with Milo. If you remember Milo.
Oh, Milo! I forgot about that.
Yeah, like that would be cool.
It would. The conversational elements would definitely be very interesting. Whatever happened to Milo? Did they just stop the project?
They just stopped working on it. Like it wasn't getting to a place where Peter Molyneux was happy with it, so they just stopped working on it.
Oh man, I remember that. I was interested in that mostly just because I wanted to see how, advanced it was, so to speak.
Yeah.
But anyway, guys, so yeah, the final question is thinking games. Pro, con, only for certain things? You make the call. But other than that, guys, I think we're going to shoot you over to a quick break. We're going to come back and do our listener mail segment, of course, and then we're going to go ahead and close it out so you guys can get along with the rest of your Friday. So everybody, make sure you stay tuned and don't change that dial. And welcome back into the FC podcast. You guys definitely stuck around for the break if you're hearing this. Thank you very much. This last section, of course, is one that I always find very important. I think it's definitely important to get the community involved, and it is our listener mail segment.
Listener mail.
So interestingly enough, we're still hitting our low point of not many listener mail. We only got 2 this week. What's up, guys? Do you not love me anymore?
Yeah, I just think that our listeners are slacking on us, and I really feel hurt. Not necessarily butt hurt like you, but I miss you all. I want listener mail. Gosh,
Max is crying, and my question is, are you guys not responding because Max is the new co-host? I mean, I'm just saying, I noticed a correlation in the drop. Happened around the time Max did, but then again, we also, not to confuse correlation with causation, we also had school start back up, so it could be that.
Yeah, don't make it about school and not because you guys hate me.
But anyway, we'll go ahead and delve into it. Our first piece comes from Adrian, of course, who sends in one every week, one of our most ardent listeners. Leichner mail. That's spelt a little weird. And then in parentheses, holy fuck nut, this is a big mess. That's the title of it. And he begins, hello, my fellow furries and pals. No. Do
not go there.
Don't go there. Furries have no place in this. Stay out of this. And he goes, it's me again, the marvelous Adrian, with another lame listener mail. And he goes, I personally don't mind about the specs the consoles are going to have, so the 50% shit never bothered me in the first place. I pretty much knew it was BS anyway, knowing that it was just for making people read the article. He goes, I'm getting an Xbox One even if they announce that it actually has no RAM at all and is just a plastic case with dead feti inside. I'm assuming he means the plural of fetus there.
That's just awkward.
I don't think it's awkward. I'm more of confused that you'd actually buy a hollow plastic shell for as much as you go for.
Okay.
Interesting. He goes, I can't
your boat, man.
The channel you guys are making, which, that'll be me and Kaz. We'll eventually get that up. We're both rather busy. He goes, I bet it'll be awesome and have good quality videos, unlike some YouTubers. Pew, cough, D, cough, pie, which I agree. PewDiePie's a piece of shit. He says that he loves Cass in a totally steamy way and that he loves me too in a really super gay way. In terms of loving Cass in a totally steamy way, are you referring to my friend Cass, Papa Big Dick? I need to have him on the show again sometime. Haven't had him on, of course, because, I haven't been doing it with Gunny, and Gunny and I hung out with Cass at approximately the same time. But anyway, I should have him on. And you loving me in a really super gay way? Interesting. You're going to have to fight off both Eagle and Kaz, the Great Gazelle, because both me and those two have some steamy love. He goes, let's us have a threesome of friendship sometime. Nope.
Yeah, you're just awkward, aren't you, Adrian? You're just an awkward person.
He's trying to make me awkward, I think. And he goes, Toast, I share the same problem as you. My Slim Shady is pretty slow and noisy. Way to combine those two of talking about both the Xbox Slim and the fact that we brought up Eminem. Very nice. He goes, which is fucking annoying because I sit up in the nights with a giant jet engine next to me. Now I'm going to tell you guys a funny story. And I will explain to you guys where this story is coming from after you hear it. He goes, once upon a time in a beautiful country called No Fucking Way, a little wife-beater sat in front of his TV. He had his greasy Xbox 360 controller in his hands, which had touched human breasts way too many times. He sat there with his shades and crummy microphone, thinking about killing people who wear Converse shoes and own iPhones. Hey, Converse are cool, bro. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. We can go back as far as the Johnny Ramone era with that, but I digress. He goes, drool ran down from his chin. He was playing the game called Call of Duty 17 with one of his pretty buddies, Loaf42069. He was playing Spartan Ops, waiting for his friend to get his Xbox working. You see, somehow Loaf's disc reader had stopped working. Loaf started patting his console and began to create weird contraptions trying to make the disc spin. Loaf desperately sat there performing these shenanigans while our young wife-beater sat there jerking off to Cortana bending over. Interesting. After a short while, Loaf managed to make his console work again. He starts cheering and dancing. However, after his victory dance, a giant cow flies into Loaf's house and starts beaming him up. Loaf gets pulled into the hoof beast's rectum. Okay. I don't know if I should be reading this on air.
This is just... I don't even...
I don't even... What are words? After a few hours, he finally gets into a big empty room. Now there are men inside the cow. The men inside the cow start torturing Loaf. Loaf's limbs get torn away from his body, his nails pulled out, and they burn super bass on their subwoofers. After a few hours, Loaf started to get sick of this. Loaf screams at the top of his lungs, "Why y'all doing this?" One of the men starts slapping Loaf around. He then replies, and I think T has typed this 100 fucking times here, the word Homestuck. I'm not reading all those off. Interestingly enough, Adrian is again trying to hammer home that Homestuck is good, which it's not. It's a piece of shit. You're never going to change that, T. In terms of the story, I remember it a bit differently because this actually happened. Adrian and I were sitting there and we decided we were going to play some Halo 4. not Call of Duty 17. And I don't know what he was doing in terms of white beavers and fapping, so I can't even begin to respond to that one. It makes me a little disturbed.
I think we need to screen our emails better. Then again, we don't get many, so we have no listener mail. But it's just something else.
I'm gonna say this is the last time I read something like this on air. I have to start putting in bleeps whenever there's something I feel needs to be bleeped away.
10 minutes of bleeping straight.
Yeah. Anyway, we started playing, and I put in my disc. I put in my Halo 4 disc, and it wouldn't spin. And I, of course, am like, what the fuck? I'm going to have this for a bit yet, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to get the Xbox One at launch. This is my main gaming console aside from my computer. The fuck? So I look it up. It turns out that the spinning mechanism for the disc on the 360 occasionally gets stuck over time. And you have to loosen it to get it to work again. And in terms of the contraptions he was talking about, I looked it up, and apparently this guy, instead of taking your Xbox apart, had this way where you essentially tape this string to an old disc, and you put it in, and the second you hear it lock, you pull the string, allowing it to spin, and essentially you keep spinning it until the mechanism loosens up again. And through a combination of that and hitting my Xbox, I got it to work again. Good enough.
Oh, okay.
Which was happy, but that's how I remember the story. I don't remember all this. He then proceeds to say that Harry Potter is smelly poop. Okay. Then he also says that he'd love to have something to enter into the contest with. However, he simply doesn't have the time or the software required. This saddens him as he loves contests. You see, he's a lucky motherfucker, and he has all of the luck, all of it. He again says, messy listener mail, and then he closes it out with tea and peace. Yeah, in terms of the contest, we'll actually be able to hit that again in a second after I cover his next little listener mail entitled Typos, which he says are a bunch of typos and grammatical errors. And then a winky kissy face. I'm scared.
Yeah, I think we might need to get an international restraining order against this gentleman.
I think we do. I think I'm just feeling very awkward. I'm feeling a little offset. The only person who gets to wink at me like that is Kaz or Jam, so I don't know what you're doing. But anyway, speaking of entering into the contest, we actually got an entry that was accompanied by a listener mail, and I'll let Max go ahead and take that one.
Yes, we got an email from Jumanji, and his email is titled, "A Wild Jumanji Appeared." And then he sent us a nice little image of the FC podcast, and it's a new header, potentially, for our, our things, our title images. And it says the podcast news team, and it uses the FC logo, and it has the red logo, and it has the blue logo, and it has red and blue all over it. So, can you beat the illustrious Jumanji with his entry into the graphics contest? Because if not, we give him all of our monies. So, if you want monies, you can enter our contest, which, we would greatly appreciate having more than just one person. But, if we have to, we will give him monies, and you will feel sad. So don't feel sad, be glad. Okay, now to the email that Jumanji has written. He begins, "Toast used podcast nag. It's super effective." Referencing Toast nagging me last episode because Toast can do so. Jumanji cannot escape. It has been a while, and I've been meaning to send in some listener mail since the Fallout podcast, but I've been lazy and I've had computer issues and yada yada yada, excuse, you don't care. But anyways, I'm back to sending my weekly listener mail. Well, thank you, Jumanji. We appreciate your listening to us and then providing us with listener mail so that we can then read it on a next episode and fun stuff and things. And this is why we love our community, because they send us listener mail. Why can't the rest of you podcast listeners be like Jumanji and Adrian and send us beautiful things in written text form?
That aren't creepy and disturb me, please.
Okay, the email continues. "It's a little overdue, but welcome, Max. So far, I like you. Keep it up." Aw, thanks. I like you too. Okay, first off, I like the addition of the newscast. It is awesome. I'm no longer as active on FC as I would like to due to life, so it keeps me filled in on what is going on in the battles and not just a quick overview everyone else gives me. Now on to the main point of this listener mail. The apocalypse, all the scenarios you brought up are very plausible, but personally I think it will bring about the quotation, quote, end, will be something biological and human created. I live an hour or so away from Yellowstone, and yes, it's a giant volcano that would fuck us all over if it were to erupt, but it seems pretty unlikely that in the long scheme of things and how technology and human life is growing and expanding, I feel the singularity event would happen before Yellowstone would erupt. But because of this growth and overpopulation, the human races, the human race's obsession with curing every fucking cold, cough, and other disease that comes out is going to create a super bug that speeds too fast to be controlled and is too resistant to be cured. Interesting note, side note, the CDC actually talked about all the antibacterial resistant antiviral, antibiotic resistant bacteria. That's what I wanted to say. But yeah, that's a thing, and there are more superbugs out there because, animals and farms, they're putting, antibiotics into cows and our all food and, crops and stuff, antibiotics into those. And then we're taking too much antibiotics because we're an overdrugged nation, quote unquote. So yeah, now super bacteria is a thing and fun stuff and things. But now, back to the listener mail. Personally, though, I'd have to agree with Toast in the way that I'm a huge Fallout fan, and I would love to see someone have the balls to push the fucking button. It'd be awful, but Fallout, man, come on, who doesn't want to wander a wasteland killing raiders and ghouls and just being a badass? Also, I wouldn't mind seeing a zombie apocalypse that could be interesting as well. But no matter how it happens, I think the world and its entire structure needs a reset. Everything has become too damn corrupt and to be revolved around money and all the other BS. So I say, bring on the apocalypse in whatever form it may come in, even if it's the fucking Reapers. Mass Effect reference for the win. Podcast is awesome as always. Keep it up. Also, I've attached my entry for the contest, which we greatly appreciate, Jumanji. P.S. In case you didn't know, the podcast snag was Toast bugging the shit out of everyone to send in listener mail, so here you go. Now I want the doctrine of the Church of Toast already. Signed, Jumanji.
I will get to that. The Doctrine of the Church of Toast I was supposed to work on over the summer, but that was actually when I took my FC hiatus for a bit. So I was actually busy. I apologize for that. I know it'll eventually get there. It'll come out.
One day, young Padawans.
One day. Interesting. I can definitely see the end being brought about by something human created. I don't know. He said that the singularity would happen before Yellowstone.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know about that one because it's real. We're already very overdue for Yellowstone. Technically, it could blow tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The singularity, we still have work to do. So although it is kind of up to chance and we're not sure yet, I could even see it being a tight race personally. In case you guys didn't know, the episode where we talked about the singularity, you should totally check out the comments. Myth definitely makes some points in there about the singularity, since of course he is Skynet. So
Skynet.
But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Thanks for sending things in. The image is definitely nice. I'll probably include it, and of course it's a little late. You probably already saw it in the thread, so people can go ahead and comment on it. Maybe people could even use it to get some ideas going, so they could create their own.
Absolutely.
Also, just in case you guys were wondering, it's not just visuals that we're looking for in this contest. The contest that will be able to net you 800 Microsoft points worth of stuff, whether it's $10 or whatever your local currency is. It also is a call for audio. So if you guys want to create us a new intro or some break music or an outro, we would love it. Like we said a couple episodes ago, or was it the last episode or a couple? I can't remember. Max gave us a little parody of the Bungie podcast intro. We're waiting for somebody to dubstep it. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, you can mix it in whatever format you want. If you want to do a slow jazz remix, I would accept that as well.
Or if you want to go all what do you call it, lounge music and do what's his name, Richard Cheese. I'd be down with that.
Whatever floats your boat.
Yeah, whatever floats your boat and doesn't sink our ship.
Absolutely.
So yeah, guys, I think that's pretty much it for us. Like I said, that's all the listener mail we've got. Hopefully you guys can send in more and enter into the contest. We'll still be running that. Jumanji, I think we're going to run this for maybe about another week or so. Give it another couple episodes to see if anybody else trickles in, because I know people are busy. And if not, Jumanji, you're going to win by default. So if you guys really want to actually win some money here, you got to send something in. Like we said earlier when talking about Nintendo, it is competition that drives every, innovation and drives everything out there. And if we don't have any competition, we cannot get the best FC art. Not to say anything against Jumanji's, but competition, of course, helps. So,
or you could just murder all of your competition, which we might assume Jumanji did. So there's that too.
Oh yeah, he could have just destroyed all the competition. He might have killed everyone.
Yeah, he secretly probably has control of our listener mail. He's just deleting all the other entries.
He could have. Maybe I need to go in and change the password. Interesting.
Yeah. Remember, children, always change your passwords and make sure they're super, super, super strong. Because you don't want people coming in and deleting all your things.
in case you're wondering what the FC podcast, what do you call it? Password is for our listener mail. It's definitely password 12345. Please don't go in and mess our stuff up.
We might change it and add a 6 at the end after this episode. We don't know that.
We don't know. I might even go as far as to say 78901. But but anyway, guys, from everybody here at the FC podcast and newscast team, thanks for listening. Definitely tune in coming up on Monday for the next newscast. Of course, next Friday for the next podcast. And from everybody here, I want to remind you to definitely always remember to stay classy.
My name's Max Doggy, and at least I'm not a self-aware program that murders all of your children.